first we'll start with apologies. I'm going to go through the process in a minute, so I'll start with apologies, if I may. Do you have any apologies?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Cannell and Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Yeah, just to say that you know the process, but just so members of the public or speakers don't understand, what I will do is that when each application comes before us, the planning officer will introduce it and give their presentation. Members can then ask questions for clarity. We'll then move on to the speakers. The speakers are going to come in and out of the door as and when. That's just how we have to do it with the numbers in the room. They are next door, watching it on streaming as we speak, so they're not going to miss anything. But they just will come here in person as and when, and they'll be let in by an officer. Obviously, they're going to speak, so we've got supporters, objectors, parish councils, and then the local ward councillor. They will speak, and again, members happy to ask questions for clarity. We'll then go into the debate, and at some point a proposition will be proposed and seconded, and we will vote on that, and a decision will then be taken. So I hope we're all clear with that. There's a few other sort of housekeeping things. When we finish, if we can not all bundle up, but just sort of go out in an orderly fashion. And if the fire alarm goes off, yeah, the windows are open.
Just remember, Chairman, the captain always leaves the ship last.
Okay, right, well, thanks for that. Right, I think I've got everything there. Michelle, have I missed anything? No, okay, right, so we've had apologies, let's move on to the agenda itself. So the minutes, to prove correct record, the minutes of the meeting. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, items, regard to on that meeting, items 6, A, B and C. A and B are applications that were in my ward, and as you might remember, we spent a whole morning on those two items. I'm really disappointed to see that there's not really much of a reflection of what was in the discussion and debate compared to 6C, which actually reflects what the ward members outlined, and then it also reflects what was discussed during the debate. And I think it does a great disservice to 6A and 6B to not have at least have it reflected that a local organisation, Don't Bury Dartington under Concrete, had actually raised and taken the trouble to commission a separate ecology report that challenged the ecology report for both those applications. And I think that should be recorded in the minutes. It should maybe also be recorded that the ward member objected to both. And I did so vehemently, as you might recall. And I don't see why the minutes should actually have such... I would actually like to ask the question, why is none of that discussion and debate reflected in those compared to 6C? Why is the 6C picked out? Because actually that was quite quick, that one, when we went through that in the afternoon.
Right, thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Now, what I've been told is that when the proposal goes with the officer recommendation, the minutes are less precise because they're not contradicting the officer report. But I take on board what you say, and obviously you are marked down as you know, it's registered that you voted against on both occasions. Not actually in those minutes there, but it's at the voting analysis right at the back, so page 7, which is that, it's got the who voted for and against, so that's that. But I think I can't see any problem if we added something, you know, if you feel better for it. I appreciate that it's a bigger issue in your, but we add something like the ward member opposed both these applications with particular reference to the ecology.
Yeah, to the ecology.
Something like that, members. Are we happy for that to go in the minutes? I think it's fair to say that that was a big part of the debate.
So moved.
Yeah, you happy with that?
Yeah.
You happy with that, Councillor Hodgson? I have to say that these are not verbatim recollections of what happened, and now they are filmed and they're online. It makes it, if people are concerned and want to check it, actually we've never had a more accurate recall of what happened in the meeting itself.
With respect, Chairman, it's much easier to just pick up a paper copy or just quickly peek into minutes than to sit through a whole meeting.
Okay. Well,
And this is meant to be a synopsis, and just with respect to 6C, it has board members' comments, debate comments, and then it has reasons for refusal. So I just think a bit of...
Yeah, no, as I explained, the
adequate
reason
reflection
why
on all of them.
that was is because that was...
I understand that,
Okay.
And that's in the way.
Okay, look, we're going to put that in,
Thank you.
but and I mean, officers have heard your comments, and it may be that in other occasions they will praise the comments during the debate. But I hasten to add that if members of the public or members of the committee are particularly interested in it, you can indeed watch it on is it YouTube or
both YouTube and Facebook.
YouTube and Facebook to see the verbatim exactly as it happened. So, but thank you for that. Any other comments, members, on the minutes? Are you happy for me to sign those? Joan, with that amendment?
Yep.
Thank you,
Chair,
Councillor.
there was it was pointed out to me that it is the Murch family and it should be a fully hit roof in the item for...
Is that 16?
Yeah.
Are we happy with that, members? So it's the Murch family.
That's started from.
So it's an MURC,
Yes.
Yeah, and they've got an E there, so it's a tiny one there. And so that's in line 4 of the ward member in page 4, and then hit roof.
Yeah, apparently it should be a fully hit roof, which is typical Edwardian feature across the whole of Salt, not just conservation area.
Okay. Are we okay with that, members?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So with those 3 minor amendments, you happy for me to sign those?
Yeah.
Thank you. I can't see any dissenting voices. Thank you very much indeed. Urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business to be brought forward. Item 3, division of agenda. I've no reason to think there's going to be any exempt information. Item 4, declarations of interest, members.
Is it for today?
For today,
Yeah. I am a member of the AOMB, so it's a personal interest from that point of view.
yeah.
But on the application today at 306.
Okay, because it's in the AOMB.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other of those? Any going on the AOMB?
I left the AOMB
Did you?
for the same reason, because there is a balancing act between BRDM and the AOMB, so I've left the AOMB's partnership.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So that's it. Please just please. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Any more declarations of interest? No. Public participation. I do have a list of speakers, and they will be called as and when for the particular item in order. As I said before, we'll be listening to it as being screened in another room. Item 6, planning applications. So we move on to item 6A, 28/28/20 full. Ms. Hassan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I just thought I would put some photographs at the beginning of the presentation. I know most of you, if not all of you, were at the site meeting, but just to remind you. So this is the front elevation of the house as it stands currently, with the stone wall and the existing hedge. The stone wall is proposed to be retained with the proposal, and the hedge either retained or replaced, depending on the building works. This is taken from Parker's Road, so it looks across the rear of the. This is the dwelling that's to be replaced. This is Derby Dean, which is we went into their garden, and this is the Willows property here. Just for context. This is the front of the property as existing. As you can see, there's the undercroft, which will be increased with the proposed dwelling if it were to be approved. This is the front elevation looking at the way. And you can see Highfield, which is the other property that we went into on Monday. So the side elevation of the existing property and the decking, as we discussed on the site, will be running forward on the site at a roughly the same level as the rendered element of the property that's existing. This is the rear, two parts, just in two parts. The existing rear of the property. And you can see Derby Dean in the background in that photo. This is a view also of the willows from the path at the back of the property, which, again, just shows context. This is from Parkers Road looking towards Highfield. If we move on to the plans, this plan shows the proposed dwelling. The top plan, so this plan, shows it with the wall retained and planting above, and the bottom plan shows it without the wall. The proposal is to retain the wall and the planting, but it's just to show the side elevation in its fullness, if you like, on the bottom drawing. And this property here is the Willows, which is slightly further up Parkers Road, adjacent. This is the front elevation proposed. Again, we've got the elevation without the planting and the wall at the top. This shows the undercroft garage and the entranceway here, which is to a boot room and shower facility. The first floor, as you can see, is at the same level as the adjacent property, Derby Dean, and the additional accommodation, obviously, in the roof space here. And the bottom image obviously shows the property proposed with the planting. Interestingly, I had a question on the site visit about the existing drive, because currently the two properties share a driveway. As you can see, the existing drive will be retained at the slope that it is, and then the rest of the ground within the site boundary will be cut away to allow access to the undercroft garage. This is the rear view, which is the top image, and the western view towards Derby Dean. Again, you can see willows in the plans here. The rear, and this is Derby Dean, and this one. The rear elevation, the red line indicates the height of the fence that I showed you in one of the previous photographs. So the ground floor windows will not impact on the willows, and there was a question again at the site visit which asked whether or not the roof windows would be cabrio, and cabrio window is a window which, when opened, forms a balcony, but none of the windows on this elevation are cabrio windows. They are merely windows with a roof light over the top. So that's the clarity from the site visit. This is the site plan. The red dotted line indicates the footprint of the existing dwelling, which also includes this area here, which is the garage and also a rear sort of shed. The dwelling is, as we discussed on site, is set back on the plot and includes a front elevation extension. Decking is proposed around the building and extends from this point to the side and inside the planting up to the rear elevation. At this point here, it's at ground level, it's existing ground level, and obviously down here it follows the line of the render on the existing dwelling, as we talked about on site. These elements here are what are known as brise soleil, so they're effectively pieces of timber which extend out and provide a degree of shading for the glazed elements which are inside of the dwelling. This shows floor plans. So this is the ground floor plan showing open plan kitchen, living, dining space. This is a bedroom and 2 bathrooms here. So these windows have been a concern to the neighbours. They're bathrooms and therefore they will both be obscure glazed. This is the first floor plan and then the roof plan. So the first floor plan indicates 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and another sort of open plan living area. This is the window that was discussed on site and looks over towards Highfield. There will be a Juliet balcony on that window, but it's there for safety purposes. So it's not an opening onto a balcony. It's just a flat faced to the side of the building for safety reasons. The applicant provided us with this plan, which shows the existing dwelling, which is in black, and the proposed dwelling. So it shows you the undercroft, which is created through using the slope of the site. The eaves level, as we discussed on site, is slightly higher than the existing eave level, and the increase in height is created through lifting the ridge height of the existing building by 1.3 metres, which means as a result it is now 490 millimetres above the ridge height of Derby Dean. The applicant also provided some photo montages which indicate what the proposed building will look like as opposed to the existing building. So the photograph on the left is the existing building, and this is an image of the proposed building, as you can see with the hedge as retained. And you can see that it's slightly higher than Derby Dean adjacent, but in officers' views it's not too significant. This image is taken from slightly further away on the corner that we stood at when we were on the site visit. Again, it shows the forward front extension. This element here of the building is actually set back as well, so whilst the first floor comes out to this extent, underneath there's a setback into the lounge area. This image down here shows the proposed new side entrance and access the garages underneath the decking, just shown here. And this one shows that image straight on as opposed to at an angle, as you can see here. One of the issues that was raised by the neighbours to Derby Dean was the impact of overshadowing on the proposed because the building is set further back onto the site. So the applicant provided some shading diagrams which show the building at various times of the day and times of the year, indicating what overshadowing there will be. So the images on the left are with the proposed extension. The images on the right are with nothing at all on the site. As you can see, there is this is at, I think it's, I can't read it very well. Sorry?
I think it says 9 a.m.
9 a.m. in the morning, and there is some degree of shading created, if you would compare the 2 diagrams here, by the proposed dwelling. This is at 1 p.m. I think, or 11 a.m. And that obviously, that shadowing has moved slightly up into the garden, and this would be without anything. Again, this one is at, sorry, I can't see it very well. I think this is at 1 p.m, where the sun is obviously moved more towards the south, so this is the overshadowing now, and this would be it without any dwelling. and then again this is at 3 p.m. When the sun is mainly in the south, and the overshadowing has been reduced quite considerably. The other issue that was of concern, and which I did address with the applicant through the process of the application, was with regard to the impact of the upper window on Highfield. So I asked that the SPD that we operate to recommends, it's not a set in stone distance, but recommends window to window should be 21 metres, and as you can see from the plan, they're all just over 21 metres with the three dimensions that have been indicated here. So I think that's the end of my slides, but I just wanted to make a few points, if that's okay. So one of the key issues was, with regard to the objectors, was the fact that they considered the application did not meet the Big River Sea neighbourhood plan. And in my report, as you will see, I've identified that it meets BP2, which is with regard to replacement dwellings. It's not required to have a permanent residency occupancy condition because it's a replacement dwelling, that doesn't apply. And BP7 is the main policy in the neighbourhood plan which was considered. It's about design, it's quite a restrictive policy, but in my report I've gone through in quite a lot of detail the different requirements, and I think what's important here is that there's actually quite an eclectic mix of properties in this area of Bidbury, so it's quite hard to define a distinctive character. However, in my report I did identify a few issues which I felt are distinctive in terms of the character. The grass verge around the dwelling seems to be quite a prominent feature all along Parks Road and Cleveland Drive and other roads within that area, which is to be retained. There is an issue with regard to ridge height in the policy, and whilst the ridge height on this has increased, I am of the view that the architect has managed to increase the size of the dwelling without significantly increasing the ridge height, so that my view is that in essence it does meet the neighbourhood policy in that case. The footprint has been increased by 15 square metres, albeit the amount of accommodation has increased by quite a bit more. I am of the view that the architect has used the site incredibly well, and the fact that accommodation is in the roof to create a much larger dwelling with minimal impact in terms of design. The other issue which is important is the impact on neighbours. We visited all of the neighbours' properties on Monday, and with regard to the willows, the property does move closer to the willows, and it is accepted that it does. However, the ground floor windows will not be visible because of the difference in height between the willows and Barbie Lodge. Barbie Lodge is much lower than the willows. In addition, the windows in the roof, as I said, are not cabrio windows, they are roof lights, and if members were concerned, it may be appropriate to add a condition to obscure glaze the windows in the office, as we discussed on site, so that that might overcome any further problems. I did look at the planning history in the area, and I just wanted to make a comment that the Willows does actually have planning permission to, as well as the conservatory, which we saw the foundations for, does have permission. There was a 2015 permission to raise their roof diameter, the ridge of their roof. So I think there is a precedent, if you like, for slight increases in ridge height. Obviously, the site's in the AONB. As I said in my report, I'm of the view that the proposal does not harm the AONB, and therefore I'm not concerned that the policies in the neighbourhood plan or the JLP are not complied with. So sort of in conclusion, it is larger. It is a larger dwelling on a plot which can accommodate the larger dwelling, in my view, and its impact on the neighbours has been addressed as much as possible through the iteration of the design over the period of time that it's been with us. So I'd like to conclude and say that my recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Ms Hatlander. Members, any questions? Councillor Long.
It sounds like a couple of questions just for clarity. You didn't show the lower ground floor, which obviously has the garage there. It does concern me, the garage doesn't seem to be big enough to accommodate a car by its shape and size. So how it's called a garage, and you've got a very, very large store at the back. And I'm just concerned that, that could be converted into another bedroom or further accommodation, which increases the sort of use of that without having, storage or garage space.
Apologies for not including the lower ground floor. I thought I had, but when I was going through the presentation, I realised I hadn't, so apologies for that. The lower ground floor does include a garage, and it does look awkward because the site is effectively, the proposal is to dig into the site. The garage extent, as it goes back into the dwelling, is limited, and there's a retaining wall. And I would agree with you, but I did measure the garage, and there is sufficient room to get a single car, not two cars, so the other car is clearly parked in the driveway. The other thing in the ground floor is a shower and a boot type room to accommodate outdoor clothing, I would suggest. And sorry, the second bit of your question was?
It was just the store and conversion to another.
Yeah, so I've added a condition to the planning consent to prevent that happening unless they apply to the public planning authority.
A couple of other points just for clarity. I note on the plans there are photovoltaic panels indicated, but it also says, if I've read it right, PV slate style photovoltaics. Is it a combination of two? Because it shows panels and then it mentions it in a note on one of the plans.
Yeah, I've again included a condition to ensure the materials are provided for us, but I don't think the whole roof would be photovoltaic lookalike.
So,
there will be some, but not all.
right, okay. The other one is the hedging on Parker Road. Obviously, the new wall and the replacement of existing hedging is very important because there's a substantial amount of glazing at that ground level. Obviously, existing hedging, building works and everything else like that, is it the intention to have hedging at a set particular height? Because it's shown on the plans and it screens those, but if they put in 2 foot high hedging, it's going to be a long time, and there's a big area of decking there. Is there a requirement there for that to be sort of almost instant hedging and it to be sort of 4 foot, 5 foot to cover any views, because there is a substantial amount of glazing from what I can see on that level?
There is a condition proposed number 8 which asks for a landscaping scheme including boundary treatments to be submitted. If members would like me to add a height to that condition, I'm more than happy to do so.
I think it would be good. Okay. The other element is there is extreme sort of amount of glazing on that ground floor.
Yeah.
Is there any concern about the amount of light emitted from that, sort of in comparison to the existing property, to the new glazing?
I mentioned this in my report, and the light still is clearly a concern for the AOB. However, if the site itself is located within an area of built development on a slope, and there are dwellings in front of it and behind, all of whom have windows, so was there maybe a little bit more additional light from a local perspective? I think from a distant view of the site, it would just be part of the built form within the AOB and the light, as is shown on the other dwellings.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chairman. one of my questions relates to something which Councillor Long has mentioned, but in fact it refers to Cleveland Drive, where the property appears to be going to hide behind the hedge with a stone wall and the grass verge. Now, anyone with any experience of building works will know that once the diggers, excavators arrive on site and want to demolish the present building, that the hedge and the wall and everything else will be demolished. So, is it in the conditions that it has to be reinstated to its former glory in inverted commas?
Again, condition 8, because I've asked for the landscaping and boundary treatment to be agreed, then we can ensure that.
Make sure that it is, because I mean it's like several feet high there now.
Yeah.
Once they start one way, there will be no more.
Okay. You?
Councillor Hodgson, did you?
Yeah, two questions if I may. One is, I know that the house officer has approved it, but I have concerns about the access, the new access that's coming up right in the junction. What is the minimum requirement for the access coming out to a junction like that? Because it strikes me that it's right next to, it's like one car, they could be coming out there and turning right, and somebody could be coming out of back, is it Parkins Drive, and turning left and not see each other because of the hedge. They haven't got a sighting.
I'm not aware that there is a minimum requirement. The nature of the local roads would be a consideration. Obviously the road, Parker Road and Cleveland Drive are quite narrow, so it would be anticipated that cars would be travelling at a relatively low speed. And as I said, highways haven't objected to the location of the access, so I would be advised by them in relation to that.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to ask was in terms of the fact that this is expanding across that site. At what point do we consider something unneighbourly? Is there a sort of like a rule of thumb?
I think, to be fair, Councillor Hodgson, I think that's a subjective matter.
No, I just wondered if there was a kind of a distance where you're kind of moving.
Well,
towards
we've
the
already
boundary.
heard that overlooking that they ask for 21 metres. So we've got a window overlooking somebody else. If it's more than 21 or more metres away, then that is regarded as acceptable. But I think this whole application is going to hinge on your feel as to whether you feel particularly Durley Dean, whether it's the relationship is going to be appropriate with the new building.
Okay.
I don't think you can ask the officer to. I mean, the officer in their report, the fact that they're recommending approval means that their view is that whether it's acceptable.
Yeah, I wasn't asking the view, just if there was any specific that we should be aware of. Okay,
And
that's fine.
just to mention that the SPD was adopted, that does have some of these figures in them, so if you wanted to review 21 metres, for example, is in them. I don't think there's anything specifically about close relationships, but my view.
Thank you.
Mr. Wyman, did you want to?
No, just to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smurden, and apologies not welcoming you as a reserve. That's good to see you, Councillor Smurden, and ask you questions.
That's all right, Chairman. Very interesting to be here. Some of my concerns have been echoed by Councillor Long and Councillor Rowe with regard to that boundary wall, which it's fairly obvious is a very important screening aspect for Highfield, and in the nature of the constructor is going to be here. From the site visit, the sort of vernacular, and it's a long term, but of the boundaries around there are stone walls. So is it not possible that wall could be stone faced rather than just a white painted when it's rebuilt?
It's not something that it's been raised in the debate so far. It is existing. It is white render. So on the side, on the front elevation is stone.
Okay.
And I would want to see that retained, absolutely. But on the side elevation, it's already as existing. It is render.
Okay.
So
Okay. But then as we've all said, that the reinstatement of all that is quite important. The other thing I was going to say, because it's it's quite small plot, reasonably small plot, and there isn't a great deal, when the construction, well, demolition and construction starts, there isn't going to be a huge amount of room for materials and plant, etc. Is there any, is there a chance of some sort of construction management, so that, to reduce the impact on neighbours of heavy vehicles delivering to the site, because there isn't really anywhere, the roads are not particularly wide, and is there...
I haven't recommended a construction management plan, but I would be happy to do so if that's what members felt was appropriate.
Maybe some sort of restrictions on hours, or as to where heavy vehicles can access.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smurden, and that's noted. Members, any more questions? If I can ask a couple of questions. First of all, you talked about that the ridge height is going to be 490mm above Durley Dean. What's the actual increase in ridge height of the building itself?
1.3 metres.
1.3 metres. And also there was a picture you did of a artist's impression, looking, yes, was that it? It may have been.
This one?
It was the one where it was the before and after.
That's before.
That's the before and after. Yeah, I'm so. Yes. Now, that's the one I'm interested in, because if you look at the two, from those views, it looks like the ridge height hasn't really changed at all. I mean, maybe it's because it's set further back. That's the reason why that ridge height doesn't look. But I think that's I think probably in retrospect, looking at that, the fact that it's set further back, but it is going to be one, because the picture on the right there, as we're looking at it, that actually is, that ridge height is 1.3 metres higher than the one on the left.
No, it's 490 higher than the one on the left.
No, the picture on the left, as is,
Yeah.
and then you go to the picture on the right.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at those pictures, they look exactly the same height.
Right.
But actually, that one on the right is 1.3 metres higher than the one on the left.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I'm assuming that's because it's set further back.
Yeah, I think
that's
it's
how-
quite hard to keep
okay.
it accurate on this sort of photo montage, to be fair.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, okay. And then the other point is, we don't have do we have a photo montage from Durley Dean, looking from their garden?
No.
No, we don't. There has been one, members that have been sent by Ms. Scott, who maybe could bring that up in her presentation.
Some photographs did arrive, but they didn't arrive until 7:30 last night, so I wasn't
Okay.
able to put them on my presentation.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay. Right. Any more questions, members? Sorry about that. Right. Okay, in which case we will move to the speakers. And the first is Mr. Monday. So he should appear at any moment. Okay. Ms. Hassan's going to go. So then, Mr. Monday, he's objecting to the application.
Where shall I stand?
Just stand there, please.
Oh,
Sit on the chair.
Hello, Mr. Monday, welcome. Sorry, it looks a bit weird. It's as peculiar to us as it is to you.
well, isn't it?
What we're going to do is you can have 3 minutes. Someone might whisper in your ear after when there's just about sort of 20, 30 seconds left to make your presentation. Once you've made your presentation, members of the committee may want to ask you questions for clarification.
Okay.
If that's okay. But so other than that, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you. So I'm Jeremy Monday, the owner of Durley Dean, the bungalow attached to Barbie Lodge. I'm objecting for myself and on behalf of the Willows and Highfield. Our core objection is that replacing a bungalow by a 3-storey house positioned to take up nearly half of the back garden area, is out of keeping with its neighbours and is a dominant and invasive overdevelopment of its plot. The key points are: the house is 8 metres high at the front and 6 metres high at the rear. It is set 4.5 metres back into their garden. It is 1 metre from my fence. It has windows on all sides, including at the first floor, and it replaces the back garden amenity space with a raised terrace to the front and side. Moving the outdoor amenity space to the front and side is a change of street scene and a potential nuisance for all the neighbours. For the Willows, the neighbour to the rear, the 6 metre house in the back garden would be only 7 metres from their bungalow and would dominate their outlook, curtail their sea views, be visually intrusive from their conservatory and lounge, which has French windows, and it would look directly into their conservatory, bathroom and private rear garden from the first floor windows. Regarding Highfield, the neighbour on the other side of Parker Road, which looks uphill at Barbie Lodge, placing a 6 metre building in the back garden would be over-dominant, and they would be severely overlooked from the full height first floor window with Juliet balcony and from the raised side terrace, which is about 1.6 metres above the level of Parker Road. Regarding my property, Durley Dean, my outlook from my bedroom, my lounge and my private rear patio will be onto a dominant and intrusive 6 metre high wall set 1 metre from my fence. Most of my patio, which is my main outdoor amenity area, will be cast in shadow throughout the morning. And I must say I do not agree with the shadow diagrams shown by Ms Houselander earlier, which are not on the website and which I have not had the opportunity to review. The shadow would darken my bedrooms and lounge, the wall will cut off my view of Bantham, and the 6 metre high wall has 3 windows, including one openable at the first floor, which will be a source of light pollution and overlooking into my main bedroom. In summary, we object to over-dominance from the mass of a 6 metre high building in the back garden, loss of sunlight, impact on outlook, visual intrusion, particularly from first floor windows, change of street scene, intrusion from the new raised front and side terrace which replaces back garden amenity space, loss of important views and overdevelopment of a bungalow site, all of which contradicts the Big Bree neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Well timed. Members, any questions for Mr. Monday? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Could you just, you referred to the sun shadowing and what you'd actually presume you must have watched online a minute ago. Could you just comment on that, because you said it doesn't reflect what your experience is? Have you had the assessments done?
I have not seen those diagrams which are shown. I don't think they're on the website and I've not reviewed them. They looked, so I can't really comment. I don't know what time of year they're supposed to be taken, but I took, I think you were on the site, were you on the site? Yes. So this shadow here, if I don't know if you can see the shadow here to that point, is off the shadow from the 4 metre pole that was erected in my garden. And I think that comes way past my lounge and onto the second bedroom. And that was taken sort of 10:30. So in the morning. So the winter sun is lower. So I think in the morning, particularly in the winter, most of my patio is going to be in shadow most of the day and most of the morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more questions, members?
Yes, Chairman, I've got a
Councillor
question.
Foss.
Would you accept that the house that's there, or bungalow that's there, is probably getting towards its end of life, without wishing to put words into your mouth, would you accept that probably putting another house there would be okay, but you're not happy with the design that's put forward there?
I am not against people upgrading the properties on the website, on the hillside, sorry. My objection is moving the mass of it to the back garden. So from what I've seen of the architect's work, the presentation, is that a lot of work has gone into making it look acceptable from the front, but that's at the cost of moving the bulk and the height into the back garden, which just dominates my little bungalow next to it. So I'm not against redevelopment per se. I'm particularly against moving that mass and height into the back garden.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foss. Any more questions? No, in which case, thank you very much, Mr. Monday.
Thank you.
And I don't know, Ms. Southland, are you going to get Mr. Marshall, who is supporting the application?
I'll sit down, that's okay.
Welcome, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you.
I know it's a bit weird for us to. What you do is you're going to have 3 minutes to make a presentation. Ms. Young will probably tell you when you've got about 20 or 30 seconds left. And after you finish your presentation, members of the committee may want to ask points of clarification, if that's okay. So having said all that, over to you, sir.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Jonathan Marshall. I'm here to represent my wife Jen, my kids, Tom, Rosie and Edward. We've visited Bigbury and the South Hams for over 30 years. We know the area. As a family, we're invested in Bigbury. We're mooring on the Avon for our boats, we're members of the golf club, and we enjoy the pubs and restaurants of the area. My eldest has a summer job down here. My wife and I bought Barbie Lodge 5 years ago with a clear intention to make Bigbury our primary home. We started the journey to create our dream home 2 years ago. As a family who want to move to Bigbury, I also want planning applications to adhere to policy. We are all custodians of our environment. We're not developers, not looking to make a profit. We're not a holiday let. We're building a home for a family of 5 and a black Labrador. We understand Bigbury and the need to preserve and enhance its unique character. We have worked carefully and deliberately with Miss Houselander and her office to create a set of plans that respect the neighbourhood plan. We are taking a tired, utilitarian 1970s bungalow, suffers damp, has a leaking roof, is shifting on its foundations, and which is costly to heat, and replacing with a solid, environmentally friendly, energy-neutral home. For Bigbury-on-Sea to thrive, it needs the support we need to support the renew of many of the ageing and non-sustainable properties. The district of South Hams targets reaching zero carbon by 2050, and we are proposing a home that embraces sustainability. We will achieve this through complying with all policies, the Neighbourhood Plan, JLP and UK planning policies. We comply with policy, as Ms Houselander has clearly addressed in her statements around overshadowing, overdevelopment and loss of amenity. We've addressed these policies. My family and I want to live in Bigbury in a beautiful and sustainable home. We have invested in a skilled architect, we have used detailed computer models and simulations, so we know the presence our house will have in its surroundings. This is not flags on sticks or false narrative. It is fact, it is data. We have demonstrated and we are aligned with policy. In its basic form, we are creating a hidden basement, a first floor at the same level as we have today, and bedrooms in the roof space. This is not, let me repeat, not a 3-storey house. We have worked with the planning office and we have amended designs over the past 12 months. We've reduced glazing, we've put in obscured glass, reduced ridge height, pulled the building forward, we've removed the brick finish, inserted wooden louvers, and many other changes. My wife and I respect the need for good governance and stewardship, the checks and balances of society. When an application is clearly exceeding boundaries of planning policy, we do need planning committees to bring debate and dialogue and challenge. As a resident of Bigbury, I support this. I present a set of plans that comply with South Hams policy. My architect and I have clearly demonstrated we comply. To close, in agreement, Ms Houselander, we genuinely believe the plans for Barbie are fully compliant with planning requirements, are responsible for the environment and provide improved street scene, and I seek this committee's approval. I will one last sentence. We are reassured that our planning officer is fully supportive, but we are open to discuss any reasonable conditions to the application the committee may wish to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? I've got one, if I may, Mr Marshall. I don't want to presume to say what other members of the committee are thinking, but I think one of the major issues is the effect on Durley Dean in the back, and the fact that wall is vertical, and just wondered, I mean, have you ever looked at possibly having that as a sloping roof, so it slopes away from Durley Dean? Not only would that affect Durley Dean and the impact it has on that, but also willows from behind.
As presented in the computer models, we spent a lot of time making sure we protect primary views of all the occupants and the houses in the neighbourhood. We pushed the house back, we talked to the prior owner, Lynn Hiscock, and we preserved the front views, which are primary views of Bigbury on Sea. Most people live on Bigbury Sea to actually look at the sea, look at the beach, look at the hotel. It's not to look at back gardens. And so we, in discussion with the prior owner, we actually moved the building back to present and preserve her front views out of her front bedroom window, which we thought was far more important. The building behind Willows, as was noted, has planning application to put a conservatory and raise their roof by 1 metre. That concrete slab has been there for 6 years, hasn't changed. So we have done quite a bit to actually work with the community to make it as sensitive as we can do to our neighbours.
Thank you. And members, any other questions? No? In which case, thank you very much.
Can I please clarify one point around the basement area? We are having photovoltaic slate. This is an energy efficient house, which will be a EPC rated A. So we will have battery banks in the store to store energy. So for days when it's raining, like it was on Monday, we can still run off grid. This is a sustainable house.
Thank you very much, sir. That's noted.
Thank you.
Right. And now we will have the parish councillor, Councillor Valerie Scott. Welcome, Councillor Scott. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And also at the site visit. So you're going to have, once you start, you've got 3 minutes, and then when you finish your 3 minutes, members of the committee may want to ask some questions or clarification, if that's okay.
Right.
Okay, so right, 3 minutes, over to you.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Valerie Scott. I'm a parish councillor and here to represent Bigbury Parish Council. The revisions made to the proposed scheme have not resulted in any significant change to the overall massing, size, height and positioning of this proposed 3-storey house, replacing an existing single-storey bungalow. Policy BP7 of the neighbourhood plan seeks to ensure that new development fits in with the general pattern of development in the local area and protects the amenity of local residents, with careful attention to levels, adequate spacing around and between dwellings, maintenance of building lines, staggering of properties to enable views, and careful attention given to the location of development to maintain the sight lines enjoyed by others. Criterion 1 requires new development to reflect the appearance and character of the area. This is an area of single-storey bungalows. The proposed dwelling is set over 3 floors. It has a proposed floor space of 379 square metres, over 4,000 square feet, and is more than 3 times the size of the existing bungalow. Criterion 2. The height, scale and density of development should reflect the existing grade, height and pattern of development. The scale and density of development is significantly greater than that of surrounding properties. The proposed dwelling is also too high. The design guidance for Bigbury on Sea states that new development should retain the original height of roofs unless the increase in height is consistent with that of neighbouring properties and does not impede on views of surrounding properties. The roof height is currently 0.8 metres below Durley Dean. It is to be raised by 1.3 metres bringing it above the height of Durley Dean and harming the outlook and views of surrounding properties. Criterion 3, the front building line should be maintained. The main part of the house is set back 4.5 metres from the front building line. Criterion 6, the proposal should protect residential amenity. I fully endorse with everything that Mr. Monday has said. The proposed development will be over-dominant and intrusive, result in overlooking, result in light pollution, cause overshadowing, result in loss of outlook and important views, and cause noise and disturbance. All of these problems have arisen due to the size, massing, scale, height, and most importantly, the positioning of the new dwelling. The application should be refused. It is contrary to policy BP7 and the design guidance for Bigby-on-Sea. And the Parish Council hope that members will continue to ensure that applications do accord with the adopted policies of the neighbourhood plan and that they will refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scott. Members, any questions? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, you've put your points, or probably the Parish Council points. Now, we know when having a look at the property, it is outdated, there's problems with it, and probably needs a rebuild. Would the parish have any objections to that being rebuilt?
Not in principle. We don't have a policy to say that, you know, the dwellings can't replace existing dwellings. I think there is possibility of updating it, but we have no objection to the principle of a new development on that site. There's also no objection to providing the lower ground floor area. I think more use could have been made of that by perhaps, you know, putting some of the bedroom in the basement. I think that would be possible. But the main issue is the positioning of the building, set back 4.5 metres and impacting very harmfully on the surrounding properties, as you will hopefully have seen on site. There's also the objection to the increased height of the roof, which is contrary to the neighbourhood plan. Increasing the width of the dwelling has also affected neighbouring properties. And if the new house was to be built on an existing footprint, then I think most of these problems would probably go away. So it really is, the main issues are the setting back of the building. That is the main thing, plus its height, particularly the eaves height, as you will have seen on site as well as the ridge height. So they're all having, you know, very harmful effects on the neighbours. So it's not so much the look of it from outside, particularly from can't remember the name of the Cleveland Drive. It's more the impact on the back that we're concerned about.
Thank you. Members, any more questions? No, in which case, thank you very much, Councillor Scott.
Okay, thank you. Oops.
Just members, while Councillor Scott, I think it's different because of Councillor Scott, but I think what was happening is there was a lot of background noise, probably from me more than anyone else, on these mics that were being picked up on the screen, so it's very crackly. Not now, but I think we need to know that when members of the public are speaking up there, that we're trying to be as fast as possible in respect to the too late now because we've had all the public speakers. Right, in which case we'll move on. Councillor Taylor, as a local member. So, Councillor Taylor, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you just make your presentation as the local member, we won't move into debate yet.
No,
so if you need to make that, members may want to ask you questions and then we'll move into the debate.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chairman. I do understand that these bungalows are probably past their shelf by date. They've got problems with damp and everything else, and the applicant's desire to upgrade Barbie Lodge is perfectly understandable, because it is quite dated, but I don't believe it's right to cause stress to the neighbouring properties by the excessive overlook onto the amenity area and into the private accommodation. There are 3 properties affected by this development. This is an overdevelopment of a small site, which would not sit well within the site, within the street scene, replacing a bungalow with a 3-storey house on a road with predominantly bungalows. I'll leave it there, Chairman, if that's all right, and I'll come back later on.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions you'd like to ask Councillor Taylor? Just for clarification. No, in which case we will move on to the debate. And obviously, Councillor Taylor, you have your opportunity during the debate to come in. Who would like to go first? Any takers? Councillor Brown? Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I found the site visit on Monday very useful and informative, particularly to get a view of the surrounding properties. I agree with several of the points that Councillor Taylor has made in his presentation. I think these properties are, to be honest, quite dated, and I think that we perhaps couldn't be in principle against the rejuvenation of those properties. I'm afraid, obviously, we can't include arguments such as this affecting people's views. That's not what we're allowed to do. That's not what planning policy is about. So I think actually that strikes me off many of the objections that have been received. I think overdevelopment, there is a point there. How strong that is, I'm not quite sure. That my main concern with this development is the impact on Durley Dean, the neighbouring property, and what could be argued as being overbearing on that property. I haven't made my mind up on this one yet, so I'm interested to hear what the members have to say, but that's what I'll start off with.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other members like to speak at this stage? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just, these photographs that have been helpfully put on our desks, it's about the 3rd page in from the back. There's this photograph here with these photo montages. And I raised earlier the issue around the access, the new access that was coming in from the side into almost the junction. Okay, I've had my answer on that, but what it does do is give a huge window into the site. So all this surrounding hedge that, we can put conditions in to have, sort of really high plants to go in there, and so we get lots of good sort of screening, is completely messed by the fact that on that corner, everybody can see it, right the way through, right in, even down to the car registration number. So I just feel that that's something we should be really mindful of, because for me, I think the visual impact is quite extensive. And I take the point that in terms of the overall from the distance of the A and B, it's probably, but it's the devil is in the detail here in terms of the experience of the people living in the immediate area and the impact on everybody going into that. I mean, to be honest, I'm just astonished the way the whole thing has been pushed back into the site, because my instinct would have been to bring it forward and then it wouldn't have fouled anybody's view, and probably it could have been done, it would have been slightly lower and all the rest of it, and they could have taken the driveway around the back. I mean, they haven't done that, but that probably would have been less impactful. So yeah, I'm quite surprised really at the fact, to be frank, that somebody obviously owns the property and is clearly going to really upset all their neighbours because they've got to live there. So, and it seems that I put myself in the shoes of each of those houses we went and visited, the surrounding neighbours, and each and every one I thought had really justifiable concerns and would, be a huge detriment. So again, I'll leave that there, just listen to what other people have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Abbott.
I'm less concerned than the voices being heard at the moment. It seems to me that this is just a natural progression of a building improvement. And I have a question really. There are restrictions on this 20 metres from window to window, which must apply only under some circumstances, because I don't see quite how that applies from the from Derby to the rear, going north. And there are other restrictions on being close to a neighbour's property. How close that construction may be under general planning rules. Well, I presume everything has been met, because otherwise the case officer would have objected on those grounds. And so I'm not convinced really that there's a particular issue to stop this building going ahead. There was a question in there really.
I think that, as I've said earlier, that some of these decisions are subjective. So it's not a black or white, and that you have to make your own mind up, having been on the site visit, as to whether you think that the relationship with the new dwelling will be acceptable with what's there at the moment. As I said, it's a grey area, and you will have to make your mind up on that. Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we've got a balance in that here. The site, the property needs upgrading, possibly demolishing the new property on site, but I think what we've got before us perhaps is not quite fitting in with what the street scene is already. It's a very large development compared to the other properties there. And as somebody's already said, the neighbours aren't very happy. At the end of the day, you have to live with the people you live next door to, so you have to bend to their wishes also. I've experienced that myself. However, the Big Green has an adopted neighbourhood plan, I believe. And if it does, well, this does not comply with the Big Green neighbourhood plan. And so what's the point of having a neighbourhood plan if we don't consider also what's in the neighbourhood plan? If we as a development management committee don't take any notice of the contents, then probably the 5 or 6 years that the people of that parish have spent putting their neighbourhood plan together is pretty pointless really, and I think that's quite something we should be considering. There's the effect on the neighbours as far as I'm concerned, changing the street string, and it's very close to the property, particularly on the left, and it's not a planning matter, it's a simple matter, but when they start to dig out the shared driveway that they've got, well, I don't think the people who live on the left, Derby Dean, are going to be able to get in and out of their garage for a while. So I haven't got any subjective planning reasons as to why we may refuse it, but they are my views. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Just to say that I think that Ms Houselander has covered the neighbourhood plan, and in her view, she feels that it is compliant with the neighbourhood plan. That doesn't mean that you have to take the same view, but the idea that it hasn't been taken into account, I think is not the case, and it has represented within the report itself. But you're perfectly entitled to take a different view from Ms Houselander on the neighbourhood plan and the interpretation of it. Councillor Long, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think a lot of the points have already been touched on, but for me, I find it strange that the property has been moved sort of back on the site, and that has actually given some of the problems that seem to be arising. I think that when you look at the buildings, when you look at buildings around there, there is logic that a building reaches a certain age, you need to improve it, whether that improvement is complete demolition and rebuild, that's just the way it is. So I tend to accept that something would change on that site, but I have an issue with it moving back, and that's really changed the dynamics of the site and the dynamics with the neighbours. I think even if the property hadn't been moved back that sort of distance, even the increase of the ridge height may not have impacted neighbours as much as it does, because there does appear from the sort of photo montages and the images to be an overbearing and imposing of the Derby Dean property by moving back. And also the street scene does change quite dramatically with the amenity area, the large patio area at the front and the side of the property, which is elevated. I would say I think there is considerable logic in actually excavating out and putting, you know, garage spacing and others underneath, so you are utilising, and I think the architect has done some quite good things there. I would have said perhaps some of the additional accommodation could have been down at that level, but for me, it is the impact by the style of the building, and I think principally changing the street scene and moving it back. So I do have sort of issues with how the building is put on the site, not necessarily even the height. That may be acceptable, but I think those elements I do have a problem with at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I found it very difficult to make my mind up on this one as well. I've listened to all the comments from the members, the committee, and the way I read policy B7 of the neighbourhood plan, it doesn't actually comply, but that's something that you've gone over already, so I'm not going to follow up on this one. This is also contrary to Dev 1, Dev 10 and 20 of the JLP. Neither does it comply with Dev 23.2 of the JLP, which states it should conserve and enhance the characteristics and the views of the area. The proposed development is in the Area B and sits within the Heritage Coast, and I don't think it covers all of these. Also, Dev 25.2 to give weight to conserving the scenic beauty in a protected landscape, and Dev 25 8, 1, 2 and 3 policies should be considered. I don't think this development does respect any of these policies. Moving on, really, the neighbourhood plan took around 5 years to complete and followed on Council Road, and it was made by us in 2019, and we all thought it was a very good neighbourhood plan. I think we're all in agreement in this. If the plan is ignored, or any other application that might well turn up, the 5 years' work that's been thrown away, basically, and I think that it might just as well tear up the neighbourhood plan completely, because we can't just ignore it, and it is a part of the neighbourhood plan. And because of these points and comments by the committee members, I would like to propose refusal on this application.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to what other members have to say on this, and I'm trying to read the room, which is quite difficult when we're all surrounded by perspex. But I don't note a huge amount of enthusiasm for this application, but equally I don't detect a huge amount of people who are willing to, apart from Councillor Taylor, move refusal. So I'm going to say something which I realise may make people squirm a bit, but I think I'm going to suggest proposing deferment, which gives the applicant time. I think the applicant has heard the concerns of the committee in terms of overbearing development and the impact on neighbouring properties, and maybe that would give them a chance to go away and rethink this slightly and come back with a proposal that is this committee would look upon more favourably.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I don't know, Mr. Weimer, if you'd like to make any comments on that?
I think it's really difficult, Chairman, because hearing some of the comments from some of the members, I'm not sure whether there is a consensus as to what would be acceptable. And given particularly some of the comments from councillors behind me, particularly Councillor Long, about it needs to be moved on the site, anything substantial would need a fresh application, in my view, because we'll be looking at pretty much a new proposal, and I feel we should be determining the application that's in front of us to give the applicant a clear indication of what the position is. At the moment, if we say it's deferral, we haven't got a clear decision from the committee. We've got some indications from some of the members, and I think it would be very difficult for the applicant to come forward with a clear scheme, knowing that that would or would not satisfy some of the concerns that have been raised. Apologies if that's waffled a bit.
No, thank you, Mr. Wyman. I think that's helpful. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. I find it very useful to listen to Councillor Taylor enunciating the dev policies, and I hear them and I don't agree with that particular interpretation. And as for the outworking of the neighbourhood plan, there is not a dismissal of the neighbourhood plan, there is a consideration of the neighbourhood plan and a value judgment on how this applies in this particular case. I think you would be ashamed to think that any decision different from those expressed that they're depending upon the neighbourhood plan is a dismissal of them and their plan. It is not. And on that basis, I propose acceptance of the case officer's.
That's the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. I think as you realise, I do accept the development on the site, or redevelopment of the site. But for me, I have an issue with what's in front of us, as Mr. Wyman said. Deferring it, I don't think helps, and I don't think gives a right steer to the applicant or the architect. I just feel that there are a number of points that I cannot basically accept in what is before us. So I will, and I think some of the, if there were slight changes to it, it may be more acceptable. I think, as Mr. Wyman has said, I don't think it's a clear steer. Everybody has a different view on it. I will at this point second Councillor Taylor's move for refusal. I would like to see something come back. I believe that is a site that will be redeveloped, but I believe that something could come back which is more acceptable in my view. May not be more acceptable in others.
Yeah.
So,
thank you, Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually going to offer to second the refusal proposal as well. But I just wanted to say that I do think that, as has been said, in principle, I think there's nothing wrong with rebuilding a building. I mean, some of these are, very unsustainable. They are thereby uncomfortable. They are potentially going to, incur high costs. And yeah, there is a reasonable sized family who wants to make a home here, and I think that's really, really positive. But I think it's not at the expense of the people that are there, and it's not just about the neighbourhood plan, it's about the parish council have raised issues as well. And I think, again, everybody's been fairly sensitive in their response, but I don't think we're seeing the same sensitivity in the, what I would say is quite considerable overdevelopment of the site and unneighbourliness.
Okay.
And I just want to say, if I may, that the comment that was made by the applicant I thought wasn't really very fair when he referred to the concrete slab for their conservatory having been there for 6 years and that they have permission to go an extra metre high. I don't think that's really relevant because, they may not have the money to do these extra things.
No, that's fine.
So I think it's, I don't think that's very fair. So anyway,
members haven't mentioned that in their deliberation, so I think we can take that. They've looked at material considerations, and that obviously is not part of it, other than the fact that it has got permission to go up a metre higher, which I think is, shows that there is a precedent. Well, I shouldn't use that word, but there are examples of properties that have been allowed to increase in height. Right, members, I have got a proposal for refusal which has been seconded. I'm going to need reasons for that, please. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think they're all to be understood really. I think it's overdevelopment, it's overlooking of neighbours, and it doesn't fit into the street scene. I don't think that really is a planning issue. I don't think the inspector would accept that. But the main reason is the overlooking of the 3 neighbouring properties, and it's intrusive to their private area. Including Durley Dean, which is next door. I mean, there's nothing been said about the light. I mean, although it's an opaque window that overlooks, there's nothing to stop the light actually coming out of that and going into the neighbour's bedroom, if you like, which could be difficult.
Right, so if you could articulate that in terms of policies, I think we've got a rough idea as has been expressed during the meeting. Councillor Long, have you got any? I think those ones that you mentioned earlier, the Dev 10, was it?
Oh, well, yes, I mean, the neighbourhood plan is B7.
Okay.
That was one of the ones, and I mean, that's just distinctively. And also, I know we don't look at views, but the neighbourhood plan does say that a view should be maintained.
Yeah,
but
well,
that's not a planning issue anyway, because that's guidance, as far as I can see. And then
I think that's probably talking about more in the landscape, a view of the landscape rather than a view from someone's private house, because as we all know, unfortunately, views are not a material planning consideration.
I understand that, yeah.
So,
but you know, with where it is, and we obviously the views are important because that's why they buy these properties.
so that would be a
But that's by the way. But I mean, I've been looking at. I mean, I'm not going to go through all that now because it's quite textbook, obviously. It was Dev 1, 10, and 20 that I was looking at, and Dev 23, 2, which states it should conserve and enhance the characteristics in the OMB.
okay, right. Councillor Long, anything to add there? And then I'm going to go to Mr. Wyman or Ms. Houselander just to, as long as
I think we need to sort of articulate it a little bit better, with specifically with the policies. But you know, from my point of view, is the dominance. I think the positioning on site and the overbearing nature of the development, but not redevelopment in itself.
Okay. Just on that, both of you. I mean, specifically, I mean, from my looking at it, and I'm not saying whether it's for or against it. I think that specifically Derby D is the main consideration there, rather than the willows behind or Heathfield, is it, to the...
I think
I mean, those are all affected, I agree.
Chairman, there are degrees. I think it's Derby Dean first, willows to a certain extent, and then the property across the road, and then the wider impact with the streets.
Okay, thank you. And you're happy with that?
Yeah, all three properties are going to be affected.
Yeah, yeah. Mr. Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. Again, you won't be surprised when you hear this. If the recommendation could be with the specific details delegated to myself for the reason of refusal in conjunction with yourself, the proposal and seconder, rather than thrashing out the individuality. What I'm hearing is it's about the siting and scale of this specific proposal that will have a dominant and overbearing impact on neighbouring properties, a loss of outlook, a loss of privacy, and I think it's probably more of a perception, overlooking and a perception of overlooking. So I think it's very difficult to say it's overlooking when it's an obscure glazed window, but I think there is a perception of overlooking there. And I think that would be, you'd be saying that's contrary to policy Dev 1, Dev 20 and BP7 of the neighbourhood plan. And what the neighbourhood plan says is proposals should be locally distinctive, reflecting the character and appearance. And I think what we're saying, whilst officers believe it does, members I think are saying it doesn't. So it's how you read that particular policy. I really would be uncomfortable with using Dev 25, because I think that's more of a wider A or B landscape. And I think it would be quite a struggle to argue that this would have a wider impact on the landscape character of the OMB, given its location. But again, that's a matter for yourselves. So I think we can draft a reasonable refusal based on BP7, Dev 1, Dev 20, and overlooking loss of privacy, dominant stroke overbearing, and loss of outlook. I'm not sure whether you're also saying visually intrusive in the street scene. That is something we could add into consideration. But I'm not sure whether you're actually saying that or not.
I think again there is a potential for it, because you are introducing at a level a large amount of outdoor amenity space, which is at it is a level which is sort of unusual because most of the gardens are set down.
Okay, I'll be honest, I think that's going to be the hardest element of those elements to put forward. But if that's members' view, then that will go in the I just want to be clear.
It's a change in the street scene.
Do you think it's detrimental to the street scene? I mean, that's what we've got.
It has the potential to be detrimental because you are introducing.
I have a potential.
When you look at it, all hinges. It does hinge, and I think Councillor Hodgson raised the point that you're looking into the site with the opening. It does depend on the hedges. The hedges actually don't screen it from the front. They may screen it from the side. But it's that introduction of that elevated, I think there is potential there.
Yeah, as I say, I don't think we can talk about potentials here. It's either it is detrimental to the street scene or it isn't. And likewise with the AONB, and you have to make your mind up, I'm afraid, but come off the fence and not think
I
what
think,
might possibly.
Mr. Chairman, from the wider AONB, I think because it's in the setting, it's within streets,
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that being included.
You want to keep the street
I want to
scene
keep
in,
the
but
street
you
scene.
absolutely Councillor Taylor.
That's
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I am, but I really need the street scene kept in.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, that's taken. So we've got the street scene, but the wider implications to the AONB, we're not going to object on those grounds.
No.
Okay, thank you. Right, so members, I hope it's clear what your vote. Oh, sorry, yeah, I can't see Councillor Abbott, you're right.
Yes, sure. Am I allowed to comment on the way this discussion is going? Or is that not permissible?
Well, I mean, you've said your point.
Yes.
I mean, sorry?
But in the way that this discussion has come out,
Yeah.
it seems to me, apart from it's not standing on solid ground, it's ignoring the rest of this bungalow is like its neighbour bungalow. It is not like the other bungalows on the estate. There are plenty of new houses of an interesting design around the area, and that's part of the street scene.
No, Councillor Abbott, no, look, you agree with the officer on those points, but members are perfectly entitled to take a different view. It's how you interpret it, and that is, thank goodness we are all different and we all take different views here. So I appreciate, your position and absolutely valid, but I don't, in the same way that, because there's a view, I don't think it negates the legitimacy of your position either. And likewise with the neighbourhood plan, the fact that the members of the neighbourhood plan feel that it contradicts it, but the officers feel that it doesn't. It doesn't negate the effects of the neighbourhood plan, as a whole. It doesn't say we're just dismissing it. But look, we've had the Councillor Foster. Did you want to say something?
No, Councillor Long actually covered what I was going to say.
Okay, right. So we've got a recommendation for refusal with an outline of the reasons, including Dev 1, Dev 10, Dev 20, and BC 7. But those will be finalised if that's the move.
Sorry, Joe, I had Dev 1 and Dev 20, I didn't have Dev 10.
Okay, sorry, we'll take Dev 10 out, that's my I think. Okay, right, members, so it's been proposed for refusal, and that's been seconded, that is against officer recommendations. Can I have a show of hands for refusal, please? Now, if you could keep your hands up, because it's a bit tricky to see for Ms Young just to take those. So, a show of hands for refusal, please.
Thank you.
And those against refusal?
Thank you. Any abstentions?
Abstentions,
That is 7 for refusal, 2 against refusal, and 1 abstain. Therefore, it is refused.
That application is refused. Thank you, members. Right. So that's the only agenda item for 6. So we will move on to agenda item 7. Can I just say, members, that thank you all for that today, and I know it's all new for us, and the screens are a bit, they're a bit disconcerting. But I think in future, I'm going to say, when we're meeting like this, I'm going to be slightly less lenient on people coming back and repeating themselves. I appreciate that, that Zoom may have got us into bad habits. Just to point that, because that has taken us about an hour and a half, that application, and we should be able to do that in at least half the time. Right, agenda item 7. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be pleased to know that I'll be relatively swift on this one. There are 2 appeal decisions on the papers. The first one is at Animal Shelter and Forest Law at Shoe Park at Marlborough. That was relatively straightforward. The inspector concluded that, agreed with the council that there wasn't there was no agricultural need for the building, and even if there had been an agricultural need for the building, the design was simply not good enough for that particular site in the A1B. I don't know if Councillor Long would want to say anything, but I think that's pretty much
I was conclusive. I was quite conclusive. I was pleased to see the inspector's comments there.
And the other application is for the change of use of their quarter building just up the road here at Eden Farms. If you're going out of, if you head out towards Alderwick, it's the quarter building on the right-hand side. The proposal was to use it for warehousing and storage of business use. The inspector considered that, agreed with the authority, and considered that the site wasn't accessible enough by non-car means, and therefore it was conflict with the development plan as a whole because it didn't constitute sustainable development. Happily answer any questions on either of those. I think they were for once relatively straightforward.
Yeah, no, good. Members, any questions? I think that particularly the last one there, I mean, that's a very pleasing result. I think the members see that. If we go out head towards Avonwick.
It's just unfortunate we lost the appeal against the access.
Right, so if there are no more questions on that, we will move to agenda item 8, the major applications and how they're going.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As usual, I don't intend to do a presentation on this, but I'll happily try to answer any member questions on any of the specific applications and where we are. I haven't had any questions in advance, so I don't know whether there will be any. I'm happy to answer, or happy to try and answer if there are.
Members, any questions on major applications? Hopefully these can be sorted out privately, or well, not with all the committee members, because they'd be relevant just to you and your area, not trying to hide them.
Chair, if I can ask a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Is this a report that members are finding useful, or is this, it's very rare to have a question.
What I think is useful, Pat, is that members can see it, and if they've got questions that they want to ask, this will stimulate it. So it's sort of it's almost an appendix rather than an item.
Yeah.
But I think in that way it's useful.
Happy to keep doing it, but obviously, if members weren't finding it of any use, then it's something that we we can not do it. But if members find it useful, absolutely no problem with carrying on doing it.
Yeah, members, any views on that? Councillor Rowe.
Well, just to take the first one for an instance, which is we approve the application subject to a 106 agreement, but the agreement has not been progressed. Well, given that it was like 5 years ago, 2016, why is nothing happened yet?
Truthfully, probably down to my tardiness. I don't believe the applicants will be or would be in a position to progress the 106 agreement because I don't believe they've got an interest in the land. I really need to write to the applicants to say, do you want this to come back to committee with a recommendation of refusal on the basis the 106 hasn't been signed, or do you wish to withdraw the application? So the delay is entirely down to the delay. It's still there because I haven't simply got around to doing that. No, but that's it is. That is the position.
Yeah. I mean, I think the example you raised there, Rose, is something that, I mean, it's in Councillor Hodgson's ward, and I presume that Councillor Hodgson is, you know, being asked by parish councils or members of the public. It is. You're absolutely right. I mean, none of the others are anywhere near that, are they? None of, you know, all the rest. The latest one is 2020, I think. Anyway,
sorry, I can answer the question. Harberton is progressing. They are in the process of purchasing the land. They're going through the agreement, and as soon as that has been purchased, they will be signing the agreement, and we're moving forward. I am aware that there's quite a lot going on in the background of the Harberton. If that's the Harberton CLT side, that is definitely progressing in the background, without a doubt.
Yeah. Councillor Watson, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to respond to Rose on that number 1 application regarding Grimhay, that the parish council wished for it to remain on the listings. But what I did want to raise is on page 32, there's 2 there that we unfortunately approved last time. But there was actually a 3rd one that went with those. Why is that not actually on this list as well?
Because the 3rd one isn't a major application. If it's the attenuation one, that's not technically a major application, and this report's for major applications.
But that's associated with a major application.
But it's not in itself a major application.
Okay.
So that's the reason.
Right.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I'm not criticising anyone.
No, that's fine. I'm not taking
No, Rose, I think, I mean, the thing is it's useful to show that if you've got, you know, you're thinking what's going on there, I mean, you know, and then perhaps given a pretty candid response.
Yeah, that's fine.
But, you know, it's something that there does seem to be a stop in it, and whether it needs to be resolved at some point. So, yeah. Right. Any more members? No. In which case, we will close the meeting. Thank you all very much. Good to see you all. So.